Hey everyone, thanks for trying to learn to play games. My name is Lance, and in today's video I'm going to cover the second part of the teaching video for Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era. This is a brand new game by Chip Theory Games. It is a 1 to 4 player game that takes roughly 2 to 4 hours to play per session, and is a fully cooperative game where all the players are working together to complete whichever session in the campaign they've chosen to go on. So in this video, this, as I said, is the second half of the teaching video. In the first video, I covered character creation and a lot of the components that focus around that character and how they all work. So if you haven't checked that one out, definitely go and check that one out first, as I won't be covering that part in setup and that as well. And I'll have a link up in the top corner to that video. With this video, this is going to cover all the rest of the rules. So this will cover all of the core rules, taking you through the 5 phases in each day and diving into each one of those phases to cover all the different aspects to it. So as always, if you find my videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe to my channel. It's one of the easiest ways you can support channels like mine so we continue to grow and build and produce this content. If you want to get notified anytime I'm dropping new videos, such as other teaching videos for other games, playthroughs, unboxings, crowdfunding videos, and many others, hit that notification bell and that'll alert you whenever I drop new stuff. So let's go ahead and head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. So after filming this intro, I decided that I'm going to actually split this into 3 films. So this is just the second film, and then there's going to be one more film to follow that is going to cover all the aspects of combat. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, let's go ahead and head to the table and I'll teach you how to play. The first thing I want to go over are the different dice included in the game. So besides all the different skill dice that players are going to be interacting with, you'll have a number of other dice that players are going to be using as well. The first die is the lockpick die, and this is going to be used when lockpicking and trying to disarm traps. There'll be 3 of these dice included in the game, and each one is going to have numbers 1 to 6 on it. And you'll also use these for a few other things as well. Next, you're going to have 2 different types of fatigue. You're going to have light fatigue and over fatigue, and throughout the game, players are going to be gaining the different fatigues under all kinds of different conditions. You'll be removing these from your cooldown track, and I'll go into more detail about that later. Next, there are 6 different icons that you'll find on each one of the status effect dice, and these are going to have different effects for both the players and the enemies when placed on them. So the 6 different symbols are Bane, Blind, Daze, Fear, Maim, and Stealth. And I'm going to cover more on each one of these and how they affect both players and the different enemies later in the video. The final set of dice are the different enemy combat dice, and the players are also going to roll these under certain circumstances. Each one of these dice is going to have 1 side that has a blank, 4 sides that has 1, and 1 side that has 2. There are 2 different Overland decks you're going to be interacting with throughout the game. The first one is the Peaceful deck, and this is going to have the eye icon and the blue background on the cards. The other is the Conflict deck, and this is going to have the cross swords with skull and the red background on those cards. From there, then I want to break down the different cards and go over what you're going to find on them. So each card is going to have the icon of that type of card at the top, whether it is Peaceful or Conflict, followed by the name of that card and the story text to tell you what is going on in this encounter. From there, at the bottom of the card, you're going to have the province code and number of the card. And you're going to find one of the 5 different province codes, as you can see here in this diagram, or you're going to have a general code, and I'll explain that. That's going to be important during setup. On the back side of each one of the cards, you're going to find a couple of different choices, and each one of those choices is going to have an icon, and there are 3 different icons you're going to find. You'll have the little campfire, which is a peaceful choice. You're going to have the cross swords, which is a clash, and you're going to have the torch, which is a delve. And I'll go over what those are more in a minute. Some of them are also going to be highlighted in red, which means that if you are in an unstable location, then you must choose that option, even if you have multiple options to choose from. From there, each one of those is going to list the name of that option and the number of experience points it is worth when you complete it. Then it is going to provide you with the instructions to follow for that option if you select it. And at the bottom of the card for Peaceful cards, you're going to have an icon which is important at the end of each day. You're going to resolve it based on the province you're in, or certain quests will also use this icon. Some of the Peaceful cards are not going to have an icon, which most of the time will mean that you're just going to keep wherever you are, whatever thing you are following for that encounter. And I'll go over that more later, but it's also going to be outlined in your quest or on your province book. In the Gazetteer. On the conflict cards, again, you're going to have some of the different conflicts, such as delves, which are going to outline the instructions for that, as well as the objectives for that particular one. And on clashes, it's actually going to show you the map layout that you're going to set up, and then again, the type of battle objectives you're going to have, and any additional instructions if you're playing with more players or whatnot. And the conflict cards are not going to have that iconography at the bottom of the cards. Just the peaceful cards will have those. Side quests are going to provide players with the different opportunities to gain experience and other useful items that they'll be able to use throughout the game. And side quests are normally going to be gained from going to town quest boards, where the players will draw a couple of them and choose one that they want to go on. And you can have multiple side quests going at any time. Each one of the side quest cards is going to list the name of that side quest on the top, along with a brief story and background of what is going on and what the players are trying to achieve. From there, then it's going to list the different requirements for that side quest, where it'll outline sometimes where you have to go to certain locations on the map, or in other situations you're going to be fighting different enemies, or all kinds of other effects. Once you make it through any requirements, it'll provide you with any rewards that are listed. For example, with this one, when you complete it, during that day's reward phase, you're going to gain 1 experience point, and each adventurer may draw 2 legendary items, choosing one and discarding the other. And it'll also list any other effects. And at the bottom of each card, again, is going to be the card code and the card number. Some of the cards are also going to provide you with clashes where you're going to have to take down a certain type of enemy, and the different requirements and setup instructions for that, as well as the different objectives for that clash. When beginning a new campaign, you're going to randomly draw 3 of the guilds from the guild deck, and this is going to determine the different guild quests you can go on. Now, this is your main quest for this session that you're trying to complete. And during each session, you're going to have up to 12 days to complete your guild's quest. Each guild is going to have an icon at the top, along with the name of that guild and the guild ability that you'll be able to activate at certain locations when you visit towns. On the back of each guild card, again, is going to list the name of that guild, give you a little bit of backstory or motivation for that guild, what it is trying to achieve or protect or whatnot. And then finally, at the bottom of the card is going to give you a basic snapshot of what you're going to be working on for that guild throughout the adventure, whether that is espionage or straight up combat, delves, all kinds of other features, depending upon the guild that you're associated with. There's going to be a number of overland maps included in the game, and each one of these is going to have similar features on it, so I want to break those down real quick. So each one of the overland maps is going to have a map key that is going to list the different icons that you're going to find on that map. These are going to include towns, peaceful, conflicts, and unstable locations. You're also going to have a compass rose on there that'll tell you the different directions, as well as a randomizer for a D6 to determine random directions based on those different locations. So on the map, you're going to have all the different spaces that are going to be separated by the hexes. And some of the spaces are going to have town locations, which will have their name underneath them. And when you go to one of these, you're going to check in the Gazetteer and follow any directions for that town that are listed there. You're also going to have locations that are going to be peaceful. Again, some of those will have names with them as well, where you're going to draw a peaceful overland card. And you also have the conflict locations, which are the sword and skull locations, again, drawing a conflict overland card for those, and those will also have some names. Then you're also going to have these unstable locations. When you end on an unstable location, you're going to roll the unstable die, and this is going to have 3 sides with conflicts where you'll have to resolve a conflict, 2 sides with the peaceful, and 1 side with a traveling caravan that you'll go to. And again, that is going to be found in the Gazetteer. You're going to also have a number of tokens you'll be using for each map. First off, you're going to have your party's location token. So as you move around, this will be determining where you are at on the map. You're also going to have a couple of other icons. This one will represent NPCs on the map, so as the different things come up, you might have NPCs show up and start tracking you or going after you, so those will be represented by the little flags. And then you're also going to have different objective tokens and counter tokens, and these will represent both of those. So in the Black Marsh game, you're going to use one of these objective counter tokens to represent the different weather conditions, as there's going to be a weather gauge including sunny, rainy, and flooded, and those are going to change throughout the different turns. Next, I want to go over the features of the Gazetteer. So each one of the provinces is going to have its own Gazetteer, and you're going to find three main things in there. First off, you're going to have all of the different main mechanics for that province. Next, you're going to have all of the different locations, including the traveling caravan and all the different town locations with all of their information, which I'm going to cover in more detail about what all these different things are later in the video during the town encounter phase. Once you get past all of that, then you're going to get into the different guild quests. And so this is your main quest for this session that you're at. And each one of these is going to list the code at the top along with the name and the guild that it's associated with. Then you're going to have a little bit of a backstory about what's going on or what that guild is trying to achieve, and the different locations, including the starting location for your group, as well as any special instructions or the quest objectives you're trying to go on to move on to the next quest. And once you complete it, it's going to potentially give you rewards or other things, and will tell you where to go in the book from there. So once I complete this, then I would go to B2 to continue on with that quest. And there's going to be a whole ton of these included in there for all the different guilds that you're going to find. Moving into setup, the first thing you're going to do is choose a province you wish to play in, unless you are continuing a session, in which case then you're going to have a couple of additional steps that you'll follow that I'm not going to be covering in this video. So for the video, I'm going to be showing you a brand new setup. So you're going to choose your province, and for this, I've chosen Black Marsh. So you're going to grab the Black Marsh Overland map and the Black Marsh Gazetteer. From there, you're going to set up your Overland map. In order to do that, you're going to grab your Gazetteer and open it up to the first page that gives you the outline for what you've got going on here. So first off, we have the Overland mechanics. So known for its ever-changing and inhospitable weather, Black Marsh tests the planning and endurance of its travelers. At the start of a session, you're going to place the book objective token on the sunny weather condition space of the Overland map. When triggering the active province effect step, move the book objective token to indicate the weather as directed by the Overland icon drawn. You're going to find that, if you remember, on the peaceful in Overland cards. At the bottom of the card, it's going to show you an icon. And based on that, you're going to be moving this token to match that icon. Okay, and then it also is going to have, this is going to affect the movement of both your party and the enemies, if there are enemies out on the board. And first off, it's going to give you the movement values for enemies based on the weather conditions, sunny, rainy, or flooding. If there's no icon, which remember some of the peaceful Overland cards do not have an icon, it's simply going to have the weather remain where it is. And then you have the Overland Phase. This is going to give you your party's movement value based on the conditions. So on a sunny condition, your party can move up to 3 spaces normally. Rainy is up to 2 spaces normally, and flooding, the party's base overland movement is 2. When gaining fatigue to continue overland movement, adventurers must gain over fatigue instead of light fatigue. So super nasty. Then this particular overland or this particular province has a regional skill, which gives its inhabitants this skill. Under certain conditions, you have Storm Seeker. So this unit determines, when this unit determines a target, the target must exhaust a number of dice from its active slots as determined by the current weather. And based on if it's sunny, rainy, or flooding, it's going to have a number of dice for that. And then finally, there's a delve feature. So as you're going to see when setting up the delve deck, at the start of this session, find the delve card Submerged Chamber, which has a special code that's listed here. You're not going to shuffle that into the delve deck, and you're going to make it accessible by placing it off to the side. There might be other cards that'll have that card added in. From here, then, you're ready to move on. So you're going to place this off to the side somewhere. as well as the Gazetteer. Next, go ahead and place out all the rest of the tokens and chips in their organizers, or however you want to do that. To create the trainer bag, you're going to add all of the skill line tokens into that bag. Now, it is recommended if you're playing a solo game to remove one copy of each one of the skill lines and add that to the bag and return the other copy to the supply in the box. Then place out the trainer bag somewhere within reach. Next, we're going to create the two different enemy chip bags. First, you're going to grab all the black enemy chips and separate them into their two different groups. You're going to have the 1/5 point enemies in one group and the 10/20 point enemies in the other group. Once you've separated them, next you're going to go through each group and separate out all of the enemy chips that have the province codes on them. From there, then, let's start by creating the 1/5 point enemy chip bag. In order to do that, you're going to grab all of the 1/5 enemy chips that do not have a province code on them and place them in the bag. For the core game, you're going to have 15 of those. Next, based on the province you're playing, grab the two enemy chips that match that province for the 1/5 enemies and place those in the bag as well. For the other bag, the 10/20 point enemy bag, you're going to do the exact same process, grabbing all of the 10/20 point enemies and placing those in that bag, and then grabbing the two province chips for that as well. And place out both the 1 and 5 point enemy bag and 10 and 20 enemy bag. The skill line cards will be placed in the back of your card tray. To set up your quest deck, go ahead and shuffle that deck up, and then you're going to place it on the right back side tray. To create your Delve deck, first you're going to grab all of the province cards from the province you've selected, and any province cards that have your province's code with the SP are going to be separated from that deck and placed off to the side, or you're going to follow the directions in the Gazetteer for that province, and it'll tell you what to do with them. But again, most of the time it's just going to have them setting them off to the side, and then at certain points throughout the game, they may be added into the Delve deck. From there, you're also going to gather up the 7 general cards and simply shuffle up those 7 cards with the province cards from that deck, and then place that in its spot in the organizer. To set up each one of your Overland decks, first you're going to separate each of the decks into its own type. So you'll have the Peaceful deck and the Conflict deck. Once you have separated them into their different types, then you're going to break down each deck into the 10 general cards for that deck. With Peaceful cards, they're going to be numbered 11 to 20, and then each one of the provinces you're going to separate as well. So for example, this is Black Marsh, and those cards for the Peaceful deck are going to be numbered 9 to 16. Once you have separated that, then in order to set up the deck, you're going to grab all 8 cards from the province that you are playing in. So I have all 8 of the Black Marsh province cards, and then you're going to take the 10 cards for the general deck in that Overland deck. So again, I'm using the Peaceful cards. You're going to shuffle up those 10 cards and randomly choose 4 of those general cards from that deck. So let's go ahead and take 1, 2, 3, and 4. Once you have done that, these cards can be returned to the boxes. You're not going to need them for this game. And the 4 general cards can be shuffled up with the 8 cards from the province that you've selected, creating a 12-card deck. And this deck will be placed into the organizer, as you can see. With your common item deck, go ahead and shuffle that up and place it on the left side tray. And same with your legendary item deck. Shuffle that up and then place it on the right tray. Now that you have your card tray all organized, go ahead and place that off to the side where you can reach it. And I'm going to place my Submerged Chamber card off next to that as well. Next, you're going to place out all of your map tiles within reach of the players. So I'll go ahead and place these out above the board here. And with your Delve tiles, you're going to go ahead and flip those face down and shuffle those up. And then place each one of those out somewhere. And then you're also going to want to keep out your starting tile somewhere within reach. So I'll place that over there. From there, you're going to choose one player to be the party leader to start a new campaign. You're going to give that player the campaign journal, and that player will be able to track all the different information as you go through the sessions, including any keywords that you unlock, if you decide to name any of your adventurers and your party's XP, and any other notes for your party. To set up your XP and day tracker dial, you're going to first go ahead and grab your day chip and place that on one side of the tracker. You can have it on either side, and you're going to set the 1 to where the hash is on that tracker to represent that you're always starting a new session on day 1. Then on the other side, you're going to grab the experience chip, and this chip is double-sided, with one side having numbers 1 all the way to 20, and on the other side, you're going to have numbers 21 all the way to 40. And this is whichever side you're using is going to depend on if this is your first session in a campaign or a later session in a campaign. If this is your beginning session, as I am setting up for, you're going to set it to 1 if you're choosing to play the jailbreak scenario, intro scenario, or if you are not playing that scenario, you're going to set it to 2. Then the final thing is to go ahead and grab the round die and place that in its slot, set to number 1. It doesn't really matter, as you're going to also set that at the beginning of each battle that you take part in. Then you're going to place out the assembled XP and day tracker tile somewhere that you can reach. From there, then you're going to choose a game difficulty, and this is really going to affect the end phase of each day, where you're going to be able to heal your adventurers and remove a number of dice from your cooldown track. So you're going to select one of those difficulties, and there are 3 different ones to choose from. There is the Apprentice, the Adept, and the Expert. And again, based on the selection there, it's going to impact how your adventurers are going to be able to recover during that phase. For this game, I'm going to go ahead and choose Adept. And that is your normal difficulty, where you're going to be able to remove 1 die from the cooldown track and heal 1 HP during the adventurer's rest step at the end of each day. Next, you're going to set up your adventurers. And if you have not watched the first video that outlines setting up adventurers and you need help with that, definitely check that video out first before proceeding on with this video. And the final step for setup is to choose your guilds. For this, you're going to shuffle up all of the different guild cards in the guild deck, and you're going to draw 3 of those cards. And then from there, you're going to choose one of those cards you want to use, or which guild you want to associate yourself with. So let's go ahead and handle that real quick, and we'll shuffle these up and draw 3. So here is 1, 2, and 3. All right, so I have Outer Watch, Circle of Champions, and the Thieves Guild. So I'm going to choose one of those, and when choosing those, you are able to look in the Gazette and see the difficulty settings or difficulty based on that particular guild, and that might help you choose, and they'll also give you an outline of what's the overall goals and things you're going to be facing are on the back here. At the bottom of the card, it's going to give you the overall feel of this party or this guild. So it says the party focuses on criminal enterprise. This often includes heist-like battles to retrieve specific items or people. All right, so I think I am going to go ahead and choose the Outer Watch for this particular video. And so these 2 will be added back to the supply, and that can be returned to the box. And then this one, I'm going to reference the Gazetteer and follow any setup instructions for that. So let's go ahead and handle that real quick. Outer Watch. All right, so Birthplace of Aberrations. All right, so this session snapshot, improve the circumstances of your final delve by visiting the right towns and completing a side quest. So you're going to go ahead and read the backstory for this. I'm not going to do that for this particular one. And then you're going to be, your starting location is Lilmoth, and you're going to go ahead and place your party's objective or party's token in there. So I'll place that down there. And then it's going to give you the quest objectives. So I need to complete any one side quest, then initiate a town encounter in 3 different towns. When you would trigger the 3rd town encounter, instead initiate the following delve using the end of session difficulty, EP, recommended by day 12, initiates the end of the quest. At the start of the delve, add one of the following modifiers based on the first letter of the town party. First letter of the town the party token is occupying, and then it'll give you that breakdown there and all the requirements for that. All right, so that is what I'm after. This can be placed off to the side with the kiosk side face up, so I know what I can do during that if I select that when I'm visiting a town. And I'll cover that more in that section. From there, we're ready to move into the game. Elder Scrolls is played as a campaign game. Each campaign consists of 3 sessions. Each session in a campaign consists of up to 12 days, And each day is a round. During a round, players are going to be playing through 5 phases in order, and those phases are beginning of day phase, Overland Phase, the encounter phase, rewards phase, and end of day phase. And I'm going to take you through each one of those in more detail to explain how each one of them works. The first phase in each day is the new day phase. During this phase, you're going to advance your day dial by 1 number. The one exception to this is during the first day of your session, you will not advance the day dial as you're already on day 1. The second phase in each day is the Overland Phase, and during this phase, there are going to be 3 steps that you're going to handle in order. The first step is the start of phase step, where you're going to trigger any effects that have this timing. These can be from previous encounters, from the quest that you're currently on, or from provinces that you're in. It all kind of depends, and you'll just resolve the effects during this step. For my example, I do not have any effects that are going to be triggered at this time, so then I'm going to move right into the second step during this phase, which is Move Party. During this step, you're going to be moving your party token around the board. And normal movement for this step is up to 3 spaces, including 0, meaning that you could stay in the same space that your party is in, or move up to 3 spaces away. Now, you are not allowed to move off of a map. You must stay on the hexes, but other than that, you can move in any direction you choose. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this, or notes, that can affect your movement, including provinces that you're in, such as Black Marsh that has the weather gauge. So depending upon the weather that you are currently in, that can affect your party's movement or a maximum number of spaces it can move. For example, in rainy weather, you can only move up to 2 spaces away. And in flooded weather, you can only move up to 2 spaces away, with some additional conditions on that, as I'm going to explain in a minute here. So with your party, again, you can move up to 3 hexes away. And once you have done so, then you can choose to do fatigue movement. With fatigue movement, that allows every member in your party to gain light fatigue for every additional space you move, up to double your movement, your base movement value. So with that, with my base movement currently of 3, I could move up to 3 additional spaces, but that also means that every member in my party is gaining 3 additional light fatigue that's going to be added to their cooldown tracks. One important note with this is if you ever run out of light fatigue when gaining light fatigue for these purposes, you'll gain over fatigue instead. And again, in Black Marsh, if you are in the flooded weather condition, you're going to be gaining over fatigue for every point of movement you do beyond your base movement for this, instead of gaining light fatigue. One important note with the first day in your session is that you are not allowed to move during this first day. I'm going to stay in the town that I'm in and visit that town. The one exception to that is if you're playing an endgame session, you will not follow that directive. And the final step in the Overland Phase is triggering an encounter. So depending upon where your party ended its movement, if there is an encounter underneath it, you are going to be resolving that in the next phase. But during this phase, the triggering effect, you're going to determine what that encounter is going to be. And there is a priority to this. So if there are multiple things on a space that you end in, you're going to resolve it in a priority order, which is always going to be any quest, main quest encounter first, then a side quest, and then finally whatever the image is. So for example, let's go ahead and say that in that town, there's also a NPC that is part of my main quest, and I end on that town. So instead of handling a town encounter, I'm going to handle the quest encounter instead, because the quest encounter is a higher priority with that. Another important thing with this is that is what all those different symbols are on the map. So again, going over the map, just like before, you have the peaceful encounters. So if I end on a peaceful encounter, I would resolve a peaceful card during the next phase. If I end on a conflict, then I would handle a conflict overland card. If I end in a town, then I would have a town encounter. And the final thing is the unstable locations. With those locations, you're going to be rolling the unstable die, and that's going to determine whether it is a conflict, a peaceful encounter, or the town caravan encounter. If your party ends on a space that doesn't have an image on it, then you won't have to resolve an encounter. One other important note with this is that after a party resolves a peaceful encounter card, you're going to set that card off to the side, and this is going to be used during the end of day so that its icon can be referenced depending upon if you have any province effects. So for example, with Black Marsh, at the end of each day, I'm going to be checking for the weather conditions, and so that peaceful card is going to be referenced for that purpose. The third phase in the day is the encounter phase. During this phase, you're going to resolve the encounter that you triggered during the previous phase, which means the space that you landed on the overland map, and resolving whatever icon that was. If you don't land on an icon, if it's an empty space, then you're simply going to skip over this phase and move right into the fourth phase in the game. So during this phase, you are going to be resolving the encounter. That can be a town encounter, a overland card, which whether it is a peaceful card or a conflict card, or it could be a quest event, which could either be your main quest or a side quest. And I'm going to go through examples of each one of these situations to explain how you resolve them. One other important note with this is that you might see this icon, which is your party icon, come up throughout some of these cards or other things you are going to be resolving. This represents the number of characters that are being played. So for example, in my game that I have set up here, I am playing 2 characters right now. So that icon would represent the number 2. And this is going to be used to balance the game based on the number of characters that are being used. So the first type of encounter I want to resolve is a town encounter, as that is where my token currently is. So I will resolve a town encounter. Now this can be triggered either by your token ending on a town, or if you are an unstable location and you happen to roll the caravan symbol on the die, you're also going to resolve a town encounter. In order to do that, in either situation, you're going to grab your Gazetteer and turn to that page in the Gazetteer that represents the name of the town, or for the traveling caravan, that'll be at the beginning of the book. So I'm at Little Myth, so I'm going to turn to that. And from there, as you can see here, you're going to first off read the text at the top of the town. This will set the mood, tell you what's going on in this town. And some towns are also going to have an effect or event or something you have to resolve as well. So with this one, we have the Olis Bay Tradeways. When an adventurer takes a shop town action, they're going to gain 2 items instead of 1. So that is an effect that triggers for the players if they go to the shop and do a shop action. From there, now that I've resolved that and gone over that information, I'm going to set up the shop and the trainer for the town. So first off, with the shop, that is your first location on the town card, and it's going to tell you how many common items you're going to draw and how many legendary items you're going to draw. In this situation, I'm going to draw 6 common items and no legendary items, as the legendary items are grayed out and there's also a 0 value there. So I'm just drawing common items for this one. So I'm going to reveal the first 6 common items, and those will be the items that I can purchase from the shop or take when I take a shop action. All right, next I have the trainer. So this is going to have me pulling a number of tokens, skill line tokens from the bag, from the skill line bag. So let me grab that. And with this one, each one of the locations is going to also show you the constellations that you're going to be able to draw from the bag. Now, in some towns, some of these may be grayed out, which means if you draw one of those, then you're simply going to place it off to the side and continue drawing until you have the number of skill lines you need. And any skill lines that are grayed out are going to be added back into the bag. So in this situation, let's go ahead and say that the warrior constellation was grayed out. I would draw from the bag until I have 5 of the others, either mage or thief, and then any warrior ones I pulled would be added back to the bag. So in this town, all 3 are good, and I'm going to be drawing 5 skill lines from the bag. All right, so I have bow. I have hand and shield. Speech. Another bow. And finally, another speech. Okay, so not a great draw from the bag in this situation. After that, if my players have any side quests that they need to complete during this step, then they can go ahead and handle that at this point. Once you have resolved all those, or if there aren't any to resolve, you're going to move into the final step of this, where the players are going to get to spend their actions. So each player in a town will have 2 actions that they can spend. Those actions can allow them to go to any one of the locations. You can go to the same location. The one exception to that is that each player can only go to town square once if there's an option for the town square. Other than that, there might be some actions that players will take, whether it's from the town themselves or other effects, that have to be a group action. With these actions, that means that every single player has to spend one of their actions to coordinate and collaborate with this action. So for example, if I was doing a collaborative group action, each one of my players would have to spend one of their 2 actions to carry that action out. Other than that, the players are able to do this simultaneously, handling all of these different things at once if they want. So I'm going to go through each one of the actions now. So the first action you can choose is to go to the shop. When you go to the shop, you can choose any item that is available and gain that item. In this particular town, if I take this action, I actually get to take 2 items. You are not going to replenish the items after you take them. So the shop only has 6 items for this particular encounter. So the players are going to have to decide how they want to take those if they choose those actions. The next one is a trainer action. This allows you to gain a skill line token and add it to your area. You can take any skill line token that is there, and the one exception to that is you cannot have the same skill line. So for example, with my Imperial player here, I could not take the hand and shield again as I already have that skill line. So I'm only allowed one of each of the types of skill lines that's available. The next option the players have is to go to an inn if there is an inn in the town and it is not grayed out. At an inn, a player is going to be able to gain back all of its lost HP up to its max HP. You're also going to clear all of the dice out of your cooldown track. Those are including the light fatigue, the over fatigue, any status dice you have in there, and any of your skill dice that you have in there will be returned to their slots, and any drains dice will also be added back into your area. So it's a full refresh. The next option is the quest board. If you go to the quest board, you're going to draw 2 side quest cards, look at those, and decide as a group which one you want to take on. The other will be discarded. Then there is the guild kiosk. With that one, you're going to be able to take out or take the guild action. So for example, with the Outer Watch here, this is the community outreach. For your guild kiosk town action, discard 1 food or consumable or hands item and gain 3 tenacity. So if, for example, I happen to have one of those from the shop, I could carry out that action after I acquired it, or if I already had one, then I could take that action to carry that out. Next is the town square. With this one, it is going to outline what that action is. So with this one, I can discard a legendary card if I happen to have one during today's reward phase, and I would gain 1 additional bonus XP from that. Currently I don't have any of those, so I wouldn't be able to carry that out anyways, but if there was some way of gaining a legendary card, I could potentially trigger that. The final type is the alchemy station, where if you have a consumable potion that you have already used and exhausted during a previous time, you can replenish that and turn it back up so that you can use it again in a later turn. And again, you're going to take 2 of these actions. So let's take a quick look at this. Let's go ahead and say with my Dark Elf player that I see this item here that I would really like to use, as it looks like it'll be pretty good for magic. So I'm going to go ahead and take a shop action. That's going to allow me to gain 2 items because of the ability of this town. So I'm going to take this one as my first item, and I'm going to add that right into my ready area. So I'll have that underneath here, as I have 4 slots for my readied items and 4 slots for my backpack. And the other item I think I will take is, let's see, the weapon sling as well. So I'll add both of those to my area, and that is my first action. From there, as my second action, I could do a training action. I don't need to go to the inn as we're just starting out. I could go to the quest board and gain a quest, but I think I'm going to go ahead and gain a new ability here. So as a magic user, I think it would also be beneficial to have a ranged attack, as I'm going to probably be a little squishy. I'm going to go ahead and take the bow skill line. So I'm going to add that into one of my areas, and then I'm going to gain the bow skill line card. So I'll pull that out and add it to my area. And that is my 2 actions. And then the other player would resolve that player's actions. Once you've resolved all the actions, you can return any of the different skill line tokens to the bag and discard any items that have not been gained. The next two type of encounters are pretty much handled the same way. These are the peaceful encounters and the conflict encounters, and depending upon where you landed on the map is going to dictate which one of these cards you're going to draw from the decks. So with the peaceful locations, those are the locations with the little eyeball. The conflict locations will have the cross swords and skull, and the unstable locations have the star, which means that you're going to be rolling that die, and that would dictate what card you're going to draw if it comes up as peaceful or conflict. So I'm going to take a look at this. Let's go ahead and say that I ended my movement on that space there with the eye. I'm going to draw a peaceful card. This card is going to give me some story text that I'm going to read to determine what is, or so that I know what's going on and what is facing my party. After that, then I'll flip the card over, and most cards are going to provide you with one or more choices that you're going to have to make. Now, an important note with this is that you're going to have the icons on the side that is going to tell you what kind of choices those are. They can be peaceful if they have the campfire. They can be clashes with the cross swords, or they can be a delve with the torch, as you can see those icons on this diagram here. So with this particular card provides me with two choices. One of these choices is highlighted in red, which means that if I'm at an unstable location on the map, I must choose that option. Another important note with choosing options is that if you choose an option and it requires certain things, you have to be able to meet those requirements in order to choose that option. So if it requires you to gain something or take something away or spend something and you don't have that, you cannot choose that option. So let's look at our choices here. I can accept their instruction in the ways of combat, which is going to have an instruction on it here, and it says that each adventurer may discard a weapon, and each adventurer who does so may search the common deck and gain a new weapon of their choice. If you are occupying the Deep Swamp Forge, one adventurer may discard a weapon and may search through the legendary deck instead. Then shuffle the decks you searched. An important note with the unstable, if this is an unstable location that you went to, each adventurer must discard a weapon if possible. So that is a requirement that I must be able to, or that I must carry out in order to get the benefits of this. The other option is to learn from their magical disciplines. During today's reward phase, adventurers can only spend XP on advancing their Magicka stat or training magic type skill dice. So that is the choice that I have to make, and so I can choose either one of those options, and then I'll carry out the effects of that option, and each one of those options is going to grant me some experience points as well. So the top option would only get me 1 experience point, but I also get some potentially some better weapons or whatnot if I have any. Or the other option is that I gain 2 experience points, but I can only upgrade Magicka stats or skill lines that have to do with magic. So I'll have to make that choice, and then I'll resolve the effects of those. With the conflict cards, again, like I said, some of those are going to have conflicts you're going to have to resolve. They are clashes, which will have the image of the setup for the different tiles you'll have to draw and how to set those up based on the number of players you're playing or your enemy rating based on your experience points, and I'll cover all that in combat. With those, they're also going to have your battle objectives, which is going to tell you what you need to accomplish in order to be successful, and if there's any other requirements based on the number of players. Now, an important note with conflicts, anytime you enter into combat or whatnot, in order to gain the benefits on their card, the rewards, you must be able to complete that successfully, which means that in combat, I have to have at least one of my characters make it through that combat alive and still have hit points on under their token. And again, I'm going to cover that more in the combat section, going over more of those details so you understand how that all works. The final type of encounter that you're going to run into are quest encounters. These can be either side quests or they can be part of the main quest. In those situations, you'll simply follow the directions on the side quest card that you have that you're trying to resolve, or if it's the main quest, you're going to turn to that page in the book and handle the effects of that, with some of those being conflicts or other things that you have to resolve, and you're going to carry that out, and as long as you're able to resolve them, then you'll gain any benefits to that. Then the final thing is, again, if you end on an empty space on the overland map, you're simply going to skip over this phase and move right into the reward phase for the day. The fourth phase in the day is the reward phase, and during this phase you're going to go through 4 steps in order, resolving each one of them. Those are gaining rewards, untraining, gaining advancements, and tracking quests. And I'm going to go through each one of these in more detail and explain how you resolve them. The first step in this phase is gaining rewards. So you're going to gain all XP or other rewards for succeeding at an encounter. If you failed, you do not gain that encounter's rewards. And for this example, I'm going to go ahead and say that during the previous encounter phase, our party gained 1 XP. So the party leader is going to also take this opportunity to increase the party's total XP earned on the XP dial by the value next to the XP icon, as you can see here. Each player is also going to add this amount to their current unspent XP balance on their adventure mat. This unspent amount can exceed 3 until the end of the rewards phase. If it does, the player is going to keep track of the total themselves. Players may spend XP to gain advancements during step 3. Now there's a couple of important notes with this. Some encounters refer to gaining bonus XP. This XP is not added to the party's XP dial that the leader is going to modify, but is instead going to be tracked by the individual adventurers that gained it, if only one or more gains the XP. Otherwise, it'll be treated just like any other XP gains. For the Sky Shard XP rewards in Delves, they are going to be gained after the encounter with an uncover objective, even if the encounter was failed, so long as the party was not defeated. And I'll go into more detail about that during the resolving the delves. If there are other rewards that were gained, such as item cards or advancements, do as the encounter instructs. If the advancement is gained, add it to each affected adventurer's mat during this step. If the party's overland token is at an unstable landmark and it completes a peaceful, a conflict, or a traveling caravan town encounter, each adventurer is also going to gain 2 tenacity, regardless of whether that encounter was successful or not. And if the party gains any special achievements, such as a quest keyword or access to a closed town, the leader is going to record that on the campaign journal. The second step in this phase is Untrain. This is going to allow each adventurer to untrain and remove at no XP cost any skill lines, skill dice, or stat tokens to make room for other advancements. So with this, first let's take a look at skill lines. So throughout the game, you may end up getting skill lines that you find unuseful or that you don't want anymore. And so let's go ahead and say with my character that I don't want this stealth line anymore. So I'm going to remove this skill line. When you remove a skill line, you're going to add the token back to the bag and remove and return any dice that you have for that skill line back to the supply. I cannot choose to remove a skill line and keep any dice from it. So all of those are going to be returned. On top of that, I will not gain any of the XP back that I spent to acquire that skill line or any of the skill dice. The next type of option I have is to remove dice in a skill line. So let's go ahead and say that with my destructive staff that I really want to upgrade to a higher level die. I really want a level 3 die. And so I'm going to go ahead and remove one of these level 1 dice. When doing that, again, I will not gain the XP back for discarding that. And then I'm going to condense down any dice that I have in there that are higher up. I'm going to slide over so that I create a new spot for that, and then I can get a new die for that skill line at a later point. Now with skill lines such as your stat line or your health token, you cannot remove those, but you can remove some of the square tokens if you want to. Again, you will not gain back any of the XP for those. The final one that you can take away is the Magicka line. With this one, you would remove the token and any of the square tokens along with it. With the combat one, again, that one cannot be removed, but you can remove some of the combat dice if you want to. And with any skill line that you untrain, you can choose to gain that skill line again later in the campaign if you choose. And again, you'll have to spend XP to upgrade and gain dice for that skill line as usual. The third step in this phase is gaining advancements. Each adventurer may spend XP on advancements, and an adventurer's saved XP cannot exceed 3 at the end of the reward phase. For each unspent XP in excess of 3 that your adventurer has, you're going to increase your tenacity tracker by 1 point, up to that tracker's maximum. Each adventurer may spend XP on advancements or complete any other advancements gained from the encounter's rewards. Saved XP may be spent whether gained from this encounter or unspent from previous encounters. So let's look at some examples of this. So first off, with the XP track, the most you can save is 3 after the reward phase. So going into this reward phase, let's go ahead and say that I had 4 XP. And I chose not to spend any of it for some reason. I would place my token or tracker in 3, and then I would gain 1 tenacity for the extra XP that I had. And so going into the next encounter or during the next reward phase, I'd only have 3 to spend. I would lose that XP that I had above 3. From there, then let's look at some examples of how to spend XP. So let's say again that I have 4 XP and I want to gain some advancements. So first I want to gain a health. So in order to do that, I'm going to check on the skill line for the health and determine the first open spot on there and what the cost of that is. On the left hand side, I'm going to use the white numbers above those things to determine the cost. So with this first one, I only need 1 to spend 1 XP to gain it. And then I'll add a health token in there with the arrow pointing towards that token. And then I would immediately gain an additional health token that I'll place underneath my chip. From there, then now I have 3 XP, as that costs me 1 XP. So then I want to add some additional dice to some of my skill lines. First off, with my destructive staff, I got rid of that other die so that I could make some room for a new die. So I want to gain a level 3 die. So in order to gain a level 3 die or a higher level die in a skill line that you currently have, you must have a die of that current level or 1 level below that to gain that level. So right now I have a level 1 die and a level 2 die. So I could gain another level 2 die, or I can gain a level 3 die as I have a level 2, which is 1 level below where I want to gain it. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and gain a level 3 die. In order to do that, again, I have to determine the cost, and I have to determine if I have an open space. If I don't have an open space in a skill line, I cannot gain any new dice in that skill line. So right now I have to determine the cost, and I have this spot open, which I cannot use as I already have a die that's in the cooldown track that takes up that space. So the next open space is going to be this space here. And on the right hand side skill lines, I'm going to use the black numbers underneath there to determine the cost. So for that slot, it's going to cost me 2 XP. So I'm going to move my XP tracker down to 1, and I'm going to choose the level 3 die I wish to gain and place it in that slot. The final XP I can choose to save and use it at a later point after I've gained some additional XP, but I also want to gain a die in my bow skill line as I don't have any dice currently in that. So I'm going to spend my last XP to gain a level 1 skill line die of that skill line. So I'll place that in there as that costs me 1. And at this point, I don't have any XP left to gain. The final step in this phase is tracking quests. You're going to track any progress made towards the party's quests that requires notes in the party's journal, such as gaining a new keyword or some other event, or if a town is closed or anything else that you need to document. You'll handle that at this time. The final phase in the day is the end of round phase, and during this phase you're going to have 2 steps you're going to do in order. The first is activating the province effect, and then the second is the adventurers are going to rest. So I'm going to take you through each one of these in more detail. So moving into the first part, the activate province effect, you're going to consult your Gazetteer and determine if there are any effects for that. For example, with Black Marsh, I have the weather condition gauge that is going to be affected during this phase. And then also if there were any NPCs or quest tokens out, they may move during this phase as well. So let's go ahead and dive into how to resolve that. So first off, with the weather conditions, during this phase, I am going to check my peaceful encounter that I resolved, if I did resolve one. If I have not, then I'm going to draw the top one from the deck, flip it over, and consult the icon on the bottom of the card. If there's an icon on the bottom of the card, I'm going to cross-reference that icon with my Gazetteer and follow directions. With Black Marsh, with the weather gauge, I would slide it to whichever condition it matches that icon. If you don't have an icon at the bottom of your card, then you're simply going to leave your marker wherever it currently is, and that is outlined in your Gazetteer. From there, then again, if you have any NPCs out, you're going to handle any effects for those. And so let's go ahead and look at an example of that. Let's go ahead and say that I had an NPC on that spot there. And my weather conditions, now that I've resolved that, are still sunny, so the NPC is going to be able to move up to 4 hexes in a direction based on the compass rose. So I'm going to roll a lockpick die to determine the direction. And as you can see here, I rolled a 4, so that NPC is going to travel south 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, one important note with that is if you need to move an NPC in a direction and you run out of spaces, so for example, if it was here and now I had to move it 4 spaces south, it would stop there as it cannot go south any further along that path. Now, once you've resolved all that, the final part of this is to handle the peaceful card that you have out. If you resolve the peaceful encounter during the encounter phase, you're going to discard that card to a discard pile somewhere off the board. If you drew the card during this phase to resolve the bottom effect, then you're going to cycle it back into the bottom of that deck. The second step is the adventurers are going to rest. During this step, the adventurers are going to be able to heal, remove dice from their cooldown tracks, and exchange items with each other. There is one important note with this. If you are playing in the expert difficulty, an adventurer must discard an item to resolve this step. And if that discarded item is a consumable, the adventurer may also resolve that item's effects before discarding it. And that'll apply to each one of the adventurers. So from there, then this step is going to have a couple of parts. First, each adventurer is going to heal a number of HP based on the game's difficulty that you selected at the beginning of the session. This includes defeated adventurers who are going to be revived when their HP is raised above 0. And the difficulty is going to tell you how much XP or HP you're going to heal. At the apprentice level, you're going to heal 2 HP, and at adept or expert, you're going to heal 1 HP. So I'm playing at adept. And so I'm going to heal 1 HP on my adventurer, adding a token back to her supply. And then each adventurer is going to choose and remove a number of dice from their cooldown track based again on that game's difficulty. The dice can be of any type and at any position on your cooldown track. So this is not a recovery step and is not impacted by your cooldown stat. With the apprentice, you're able to remove 2 dice from your cooldown track. With adept or expert, you're able to remove 1 die. So looking at an example of this, I have a bunch of dice in my cooldown track right now. I have a couple of light fatigue, an over fatigue, my combat die, and 2 of my destructive staff dice. So I can choose any one of these to remove. If I remove one of the combat or skill line dice, I'm going to add it back to its area. With the fatigue is simply going to be returned to the supply. So as over fatigue is really nasty and something I don't want, I'm going to go ahead and choose to remove that one. Let's go ahead and instead say that I removed this light fatigue die. All the rest of the dice are going to be slid over to the left side at that point. From there, then each adventurer may trade any number of item cards with any other adventurer. They're able also to move items freely between their ready slots and pack, and also choose to discard any items they don't want at this point. And then finally, you can trigger any effects with end of day timing, such as the party's guild assist ability, which I'll cover a little bit later in the video. At this point, your day is over and you're ready to move into the next day and start that one. Now, if this is the end of day 12 and you have not completed your guild's quest, at this point you have lost this session and the campaign and we'll have to start a new one. So now that I've made it through the round sequence, the last thing I want to do is cover a little bit more in depth the status effects and how a guild assist works. The first status effect I want to look at is Bane, and this one works pretty much the same way with both heroes and enemies. With a hero, if Bane is in the cooldown track, at the beginning of that hero's turn, that hero is going to take 1 true damage. True damage bypasses any defenses that character has, including any bonus health that character has. So you're always going to take hit points right off of the character, removing a health chip from the bottom of the character, unless the character has an ability or something else that specifically says that it blocks true damage. An enemy that has a true damage status effect is simply going to remove a health chip at the beginning of its turn. The next status effect I want to go over is Blind, and this one works pretty much the same way with heroes and enemies. When a unit suffers from blind, it is going to treat all other units as opposing units, whether they're normally friend or foe. And when it performs an engage action, it's going to target the strongest unit that it's adjacent to. So let's go ahead and say, for example, that our hero is suffering from blind. When he performs an engage action, he is going to target the strongest enemy, which would be this enemy over here. even if he wanted to target this enemy normally, as it's a higher enemy and probably is going to do more damage to him. He has to target this enemy if he is blind. Then let's go ahead and say that this enemy is suffering from blind. When this enemy engages, normally it would obviously engage the hero that it's adjacent to, but in this situation, it's going to engage the strongest unit that is adjacent to it, which is going to be this unit, as he's already taken some damage. And with the unit, this one normally targets multiple heroes, but when blind, you are only going to be able to target one adjacent unit with that. With Daze, it is only going to last one turn, and with Daze, it is going to work pretty much the same way with both heroes and enemies. With Daze, if you move, then you cannot roll dice, and if you roll dice, then you cannot move. So let's look at a couple of examples of this. So with this enemy, he is suffering from Daze. At the beginning of his turn, he is going to move as he needs to be adjacent to his target, so when he moves, then he is adjacent to his target. Since he moved with Daze, then he cannot roll any dice, so he will not be rolling his attack for this turn. At the end of his turn, then that die is going to be removed. With heroes, it works pretty much the same way. So with a hero, you can choose whether or not you want to move at the beginning of your turn or roll dice. So let's go ahead and say during this hero's turn, he's suffering from Daze. He is going to choose to engage this guy, his enemy first. And so at that point, then he would not be able to move for the rest of his turn, even if he only did the one engage. And then again, he would remove the status effect die from his cooldown track. The next status effect I want to cover is Fear. So when a hero is suffering from the Fear status effect, you are going to ignore all of its non-combat skill lines. So you basically are pretty much only going to be able to use its combat line. Now, if you have any dice in your cooldown track that you get benefits from, or any dice in your active slots, you'll still be able to use those and treat those as normal. It's just that you won't be able to add any of your other skill lines to any effects while you're suffering from Fear. With enemies that suffer from Fear, they're going to consider any keywords that they have in their bottom section to be as if they didn't have them. So you would consider this section to be blank for the purposes of Fear. So for example, with the Wood Elf, I would not be able to resolve the dodge effect. I would consider it as if it did not have dodge while suffering from Fear. With the Maim status effect, when this unit rolls combat skill dice, the total damage rolled is going to be reduced by half, and then you're going to round down from there. So for heroes, anytime a hero rolls any of their combat skill dice, you're going to total up that value of just the combat skill dice, which are these white dice, and divide that by half. So let's go ahead and say, for example, that I rolled these two dice here, and I got a 1 and a 2 for a total of 3. So I would half that to 1.5, and then that's going to be rounded down to 1 damage. On the enemy side, you're going to do the exact same thing. With the enemies, they're going to be rolling the black enemy skill dice. You'll simply total up that value and half that value rounded down. The one exception to that is true damage, where you're not going to reduce true damage. The final status effect I want to look at is Stealth, and this is going to work the same for adventurers and enemies. This unit can only be targeted by opposing units that start their turn adjacent, and after this unit deals damage, they're going to lose this die. So let's look at a couple of examples of this. So first off, with the enemy, let's go ahead and say that it is the enemy's turn and this enemy activates. So that enemy, it has the Stealth status effect. So with that enemy, he can target this hero even though the hero has the Stealth status effect, as he started his turn adjacent to this hero. Now with the other enemy, when that enemy activates, it could not target this hero as the hero has Stealth, and so it would not be able to target that hero as it is not adjacent to him when it started its turn. Now with this enemy, going back to it, if it attacks the hero, then it is going to lose its status effect after resolving that attack. And the same thing is going to be true for the hero. So with this enemy having the Stealth, this hero could target this enemy as he started his turn adjacent to him. And then once you resolve that engage, then you're going to remove that status effect from his cooldown track. If your party gets into a dire situation, you have the option of calling for a guild assist. And this is a very powerful ability. This can only be done once during the campaign, and the party must trigger its guild assist either during a battle at the end of the round or during the end of day phase, where the adventurers are going to handle a rest step. A guild assist can be triggered only during sessions 1 and 2 and cannot be triggered during session 3 endgame quest. When this ability is triggered, each adventurer, including defeated adventurers, are going to immediately heal to their full HP. Then they can remove all light, over fatigue, status dice from their cooldown tracks and may recover any number of exhausted or drained skill dice. Each adventurer is also going to draw one legendary and common item and will get to keep both of those as long as their inventory allows it, or they can trade or discard other cards to make room for those. Additionally, there's a couple of other benefits depending upon when your party calls this. First, if your party is in a battle, the party may reset the round counter to any number it wishes, and any defeated adventurers are going to be revived and deployed to any unoccupied hex of their choosing. If you trigger this instead at the end of the day, the party may immediately move its party token up to 6 hexes on the Overland map. So if you're in a situation where you really need to move fast and hard because you've been bogged down for the campaign so far, this is a great option for that. Now, in either situation, after the ability is resolved, the party must add the keyword Guild Assist to its campaign journal major keywords field for this session. After doing so, it cannot gain the keyword from its guild quest for this session either. Well, I hope you found this second video helpful in covering the core rules of the game. The final video is coming soon and will cover all of the different aspects of combat and how combat works and the different types of combat and how you're going to resolve those. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.